Welcome to No Borders with Brian and Carrie. So in this last week, what we did is on YouTube, we released a video about why Americans are choosing to leave the United States and retire to Europe. Now during that video, a lot of questions came in of what about Southeast Asia? And we thought what better time to go ahead and just put together in this week's podcast what we thought of our travels through Southeast Asia, and do we see it as a place that we would retire to as well? Because I know a lot of people do choose Southeast Asia.
Well, I think generally speaking, if you're thinking about retiring to Southeast Asia, you've already taken into consideration what the cost of living is going to be, and spending the amount of time that we did in Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia, we've got a pretty good feel for what you can expect to pay.
Right. We were in that area for almost 6 months.
Yeah.
So we really had quite a bit of experience with what accommodations cost and what you're going to get for the money. One of the things that we found right away was you did get a lot for the money, but your spaces are very small.
Yeah, you got limited space.
Yeah.
Nothing like we're in currently at all. I don't think you'd find a place like this in Southeast Asia unless you paid premium price.
You might be, and that premium price is probably equal to what we're paying or probably less than what we're paying.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, but I think that we got used to the sizes of the places, but I don't know if long term, because a lot of the style of the places that you're getting I would consider them more of a studio.
Yeah.
Like you would have a little wall that went, like a door that shut in between the bedroom area. That was common in most places that we stayed. Some didn't even have that. It was just a curtain.
Right.
But that was quite common. And these were very nice places that we were staying in. We really loved them, but we're thinking more that, could you live in that?
Could you live here? We lived there in each one of these locations for a month, and it was doable. Could we do 3 months?
Right.
Could we do 6 months?
Yeah.
Could we do a year? Probably not.
No, I think that we felt like, it was doable because you knew you were going to be moving to a new location in the next month. But if we knew we had to kind of be in that space, that you're kind of on top of each other a lot, there really wasn't. One thing that is very lacking in Southeast Asia kind of in general is the cooking facilities in your accommodation. So you usually don't have like a full-fledged large kitchen or anything. You're going to have the bare necessities, which worked fine for us while we're there. And we'll kind of get into that whole section of food and everything. But I think accommodation-wise, we could have spent more money, but the whole point is keeping those costs low.
The whole point is keeping the costs low, and I think that would also be the point for whoever decides that Southeast Asia would be a destination to retire, is to cut those costs as much as possible. If you're planning on living there based off solely your Social Security, then these places we stayed in may be what you decide to do.
Right, and that is one of the, I think, the huge draws is that people can go, because we had a lot of people say, oh, you can't move to those places on Social Security that we mentioned in our Europe video, which we disagree with. We've heard enough people that have gone there. You can definitely find locations that are outside of those big cities and do that. But in Southeast Asia, kind of across the board, you are going to be able to do your living costs on Social Security. And these are for the people even that are not getting very much on Social Security. They're on that lower end, not the high end. And so then it kind of comes down to, balancing quality of life and whatnot. So I think that, as far as cost of living, I would say Southeast Asia gets a huge thumbs up. For us, it's one of those locations that we see as when we're looking to save some money on our living costs, because just as an example, we had a place in Chiang Mai, which we absolutely loved, and it's a popular place where people say if I'm going to retire anywhere in Thailand, it would be to Chiang Mai. We didn't really understand it at the time, but then after spending a month there, it is way up on our list, and once again, we don't really understand why, because it didn't have a lot of those things that typically check a box for us.
It had great food. It had a grocery stores. It had everything that you need to survive, and not just survive, but have a comfortable life. Now, we were there in Chiang Mai in the month of February, I believe. Could we have been there March, April, and May?
Right, because then there's other issues that come into play.
There's other issues that come into play. So for me, it was a great place to visit. maybe not to live long term.
Right. It would be like a 3-month visit accordingly, as far as time of year.
Right.
But I mean, costs there, we paid about $625 for a month's stay in a very nice condo.
Very nice condo.
Like we
Small,
said, small,
nice.
but very nice. Everything in it was very nice. It had a gym, it had a pool, and it was a lot of them have these little tiny pools. They're not a real big pool. I mean, it's plenty to go in and do laps, but they're pretty small.
Right.
And but a very nice gym. We like that. So $625, that's pretty awesome.
That's amazingly awesome. It leaves you maybe some leftovers to do other excursions, to do other things that you might not otherwise have gotten to do. Now, in Vietnam, we paid even less than that.
Right.
And for basically the same type of a place.
A little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger. The same kind of a pool.
Same layout and everything.
The pool was a little bit bigger also. And that was, $390.
Yeah.
For the entire month.
We loved our place in Vietnam. Now, from the pool area on that deck area, they had a nicer pool there. No gym though, but we could see the ocean from there. So that was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just are getting so much more for your money as far as accommodations go. And like you say, doing those excursions and having that extra money, that's where that whole just quality of life comes into play.
Right.
We
wouldn't have been able to do the Halong Bay excursion or even the Maya Bay excursion that we went on. I think we went on 2 excursions the whole time we were there. We wouldn't have been able to do those if, say, we were on that same budget in Europe.
Exactly. Yeah, there
North
wouldn't have been
America,
any room
we just wouldn't have had the funds to do it. So there are definitely pros to staying in these smaller accommodations.
Right. Yeah. So that's a huge plus, the cost of living. But now, what about food? Food is another area where you're saving a ton of money, because the average price for us eating out was around $1.50 to $2, and these were not like stop and like at a food cart. That was even cheaper. That was around $1 sometimes.
Yeah, you could go to a nice restaurant.
Yeah, and what's considered a nice restaurant, I guess.
For $5, but you could go to a restaurant and get really good food for $2.
Yeah.
$2.50 with a drink.
Those were some of our favorite places, because one of the places that we went in Thailand was a Michelin star, well known for the specific dish that and I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it is an incredibly spicy dish. And so we were like, oh, we've got to check this out. So we go and we find that location, and of course there was a line. And we're like, well, we got to go, because now there's a line, and you always got to go.
There's a line. That's right.
And we were so glad we did, because we got the 2 soups. We actually ended up ordering another one as well, because we wanted to try something different off the menu. And we both got a drink, one of their Thai teas, and the bill came to, I think it was $5 for all of it. So, as far as food goes, we found it was so nice, because we never had to question, like, oh, we're going to go out and eat, because that's the other thing. You eat out all of your meals.
Right. You really don't need to cook at home. You don't have the well, you do, but is it really what you want to cook off of? Eating at home is sometimes more difficult and more expensive than just going downstairs and going to one of the local little hole-in-the-wall restaurants and eating for a fraction of the price. And they do all the cooking for you.
They do. Now, on the con side of that, I would say what we kind of ran into is, because when you reach, it's very hot, it's very humid, and we'll kind of get into the weather situation in a bit here. But you kind of ask yourself sometimes. There were times we ordered in. They have the services where you can just order and they deliver to you, and it's very inexpensive as well. But you don't want to go out and eat, And so there were plenty of times we didn't want to go sit at some place, because everything's open air outside. It's not like there's air-conditioned places that you're going to sit in. And a lot of the food is really spicy. So you got spicy and hot temperature. So on the con side of that, going to the grocery store, which grocery stores weren't really... Now, we had a nice grocery store in Chiang Mai, but outside of Chiang Mai, we did in Malaysia as well, but I mean, throughout Thailand, for the most part, any of the island areas we went to, you were really doing majority of your shopping at what was more the style of a 7-Eleven.
Right, or a 7-Eleven.
Yeah, a 7-Eleven, yeah.
7-Eleven.
We actually missed the 7-Eleven.
They had great 7-Elevens. Yeah.
They're nothing like the 7-Elevens in the States.
No, and there are, even in Koh Samui, there are grocery stores, great grocery stores on Koh Samui, but you've got to be able to get to them.
Yeah.
We didn't have the car transportation or the scooter transportation to get to those grocery stores, so we did rely on food service coming in, and we're going to 7-Eleven.
Which worked really well because we had a pool and, our place in Koh Samui, so we lived the island life, which was a lot of fun. And we had a pretty nice place. It had a great pool. And we paid just about $1,000 for the month there, as far as accommodations go. Once again, it was a studio style with a curtain, very dark apartment, but it was fine. And so it was kind of nice. We would spend the day by the pool.
Had
and
a
then
very
we
large
could
pool.
Yeah, and then we could just order in dinner at night. And, we would order our food and sometimes get another, because you're like, is it going to be enough? Because it's like $1.50 for this meal. And one of the times we ordered 2 dishes each because we were thinking we were so hungry. And it comes and we barely finished the 1 each. So we had dinner for the next night.
We had
so we were good
leftovers
to
the
go.
next night. It was great. So there's a lot to love about Southeast Asia. The food, the cost, the beaches, obviously. If you're not staying on the beach and you're up in Chiang Mai, again, even better food, in my opinion, up north.
Yeah, they have a totally different kind of food. It's a spicier food up north.
Spicier food, maybe a little more rich. Everything you think about when you think about Thailand, Vietnam, Southeast Asia is a positive, and you're going to get it.
Yeah.
But there are things that you need to be aware of.
Right.
Like I just said, it's a great place to visit. I don't think I could live there full time. I don't think I could retire there. And why is that?
Right. So one of the key reasons is weather. So the climate there. You have to be, because a lot of people have said, I'd retire there in a heartbeat. Well, if you've never been, and like we said, we did go for just about 6 months, we were in the area. Now, when we arrived, it was January, very beginning of January. January was fine. February was okay. March was starting to enter into, it was getting really hot.
We got into Vietnam in March. We left Vietnam in March, and it was nice. And then it started getting hot when we went down to Koh Samui. It
got hot, but that wasn't really the main problem. Like, we can deal with heat. Everywhere we travel, for the most part, we can deal with really hot temperatures. That's nothing new. But it was the humidity. Now, we come from the Pacific Northwest. There's humidity. It's falling like rain. But we do not have where you walk outside and you are so hot and sticky and wet. And, it was okay, like in Koh Samui, because we had the pool. And so we could kind of just go and lay by the pool, hop in, get out, and that seemed okay to temper it. But you almost dreaded walking, because like we said, we weren't right in town, and then you needed food. So you dreaded walking somewhere to go get food.
You really couldn't go anywhere. It became even worse in Malaysia.
It was horrible in Malaysia.
In Malaysia, we were suffering. I thought I was going to die a couple times over.
We wouldn't even leave we wouldn't leave our condo. There were days that we had convenience stores right down below us, so they weren't hard to get to, but our condo was air conditioned, but it was, as soon as you walked out into the hallway, the air conditioning was gone because there's no windows and stuff. And then you'd have to get down to the convenience store. Well, by the time you just made that trek, which wasn't that far, even though we were on like the 47th floor, you were wet. You were wet and gross, and Brian said to me one day, he's like, do you want to go? I need to run to the convenience store and grab something. I'm like, no, I took a shower. Like, I wanted to just feel clean for a day, because you just never felt clean.
Well, even the locals don't go out during the day. They go out at night. For this very reason. So there are some drawbacks.
There's some major drawbacks, and the heat isn't the only weather issue.
It's not the weather issue. There's infrastructure.
Well, no, but I mean, let's go back onto the weather, because there's a lot of other deterring factors for weather.
smoke season.
Right. Smoke season was a major, like we skirted just around where it was kind of perfect timing as far as when we visited Chiang Mai.
Yes.
Because that northern territory is where it's the worst. And so they do their slash burning.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot of care about the pollution level at that point. And it ends up being one of the highest rated, like the worst air quality in the world, during that time frame.
And it doesn't just stay right there. It moves around Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
There are other parts of Southeast Asia that also do the same slash and burn. Just Chiang Mai seems to get the brunt of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of in a valley, I believe. But so you got to be aware of that. Soon after the smoky season comes the rainy season.
Right. And we kind of skirted that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because we left in May. And I think that kind of is going to start around June, July, as you're then going to have the rainy season where it's not the rain like, once again, in the Pacific Northwest, we're used to the just drizzle. The occasional downpour's really cool. But the torrential...
The monsoons and the
flooded streets, and you're not going out because now it's raining so hard.
And they've got a lot of that recently.
Yeah.
So that's something that you've got to be aware of if that's where you're going to choose to retire.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that in Europe for the most part. You're not going to get it in North America for the most part. Sure, you're going to get down in the southern states like Florida.
Right.
You're going to get that humidity and the same type of weather. But I'm not choosing to retire down there either.
No, exactly. And I think that to us was probably the biggest detouring factor of our time in Southeast Asia. And when we were used to travel and we were gone for 5-6 months at a time, we want to go back to Southeast Asia, but we were having a really hard time of figuring out, okay, we're going to fly to Southeast Asia. Where do we go? Because we can't do that again. We both were like, that was just kind of miserable.
It's too long.
But 3 months in those right time of year was perfect. And so with our new schedule of like 3 months at a time traveling and then returning home for a month, it will work perfect because we can go over during the perfect time to be there and then exit. But I would say to anybody who's thinking that, maybe they've just looked at how cheap it is to retire there and they're thinking, oh, this is going to be wonderful. It's a tropical location and so beautiful. It's Southeast Asia. You see all the pictures. There are a lot of downsides that I would just make sure that you do the research on that as well.
You go visit first and decide whether you can do it. The point I was going to touch on a few minutes ago, just, the infrastructure. Do you know how to ride a motorbike well enough to do it like a local? Because I know of people that were experienced on mopeds and scooters and motorbikes, but then they got over there and that atmosphere was completely different.
Yeah.
Now, on Koh Samui, sure, you probably get away with it.
Yeah.
But Phuket and some of these other destinations, Bangkok, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that at all.
No, and their main form of the getting around, like we did do a bus in Phuket, which was fine, but it was a bus that really it was the airport bus, so it kind of just skirted the main towns and stuff. So it wasn't one that you would use to get further in or around the town. What they used was a lot of the little red trucks, and there is a name for them, but we can't remember what that is right now. But they use these little red trucks. Now, what was really literally on the bus is we got onto the bus in this extremely hot temperatures and we had air conditioning. Yes. But when you're getting into the back of these little red trucks, once again, you're out in that heat and you really don't have escape from it. So I think that the transportation, the only place that we experienced amazing transportation while we were there was when we were in Bangkok. Bangkok had some of the best transportation as far as getting around that city. Right. It was so perfect, so easy to navigate, very inexpensive. But other than that, their train systems, we hear there's a new fast train coming from out of the area into, into, say, I think it was Bangkok.
I think China to Bangkok or something like that. You might know.
But otherwise, it's, getting around the area, because people have asked us, well, what if you were to fly from one location, or why are you flying?
Right.
Why aren't you taking the train?
Right.
Well, we always look into that. I mean, we always check the options, because we actually personally prefer a train when it makes sense. But when we were going to go to Chiang Mai, you had to do the overnight train, because that was kind of the main one that was offered. And the price was the same, if not more, to do it. And it took I can't remember, it was like 10 hours or 12 hours to do it.
Why don't we fly in an hour and a half?
We flew, we were there, and they fed us a meal on the flight in that time frame, you know. And so, you know, that kind of veers into the other benefit. One positive on being in that area, same as kind of in Europe. When you are there, though, as soon as you get to Southeast Asia, you can hop around and you can see the areas. Sort of quite inexpensive. Yeah. We were getting tickets to hop from, you know, one area to the other for around $60. So very affordable to do.
Yeah, and it's just quick and easy. You know, the flight from Chiang Mai to Hanoi was, 2 hours, I believe. Again, very affordable to get from the airport in Hanoi to the French Quarter hotel that we stayed in. Very easy. So you can get...
Easy but dangerous.
Easy but dangerous. You can get from point A to point B, really, but it's the everyday activity that might be a little more challenging in some areas. Like you said, Bangkok was great, but in Chiang Mai, if you're not used to you know, jumping up into the back of a truck, it might not be something that you want to do. Yeah. You can get a cab. They do have cabs.
Yep, they have the cabs, and they're quite affordable. Yes. And I think everywhere we went, I think they used Bolt was the one that we were using. I'm trying to Grab or something, but we did use one of those applications, and it was very easy to get a taxi or get an Uber wherever we were at.
But you know, what if you're just going on a short distance? Just walk down to the grocery store and you're not sure-footed, or you've got some sort of a disability. Are the sidewalks what you might be used to living in the western part of the world? No.
Not at all.
They're not. Yeah. There's holes in the sidewalks. They're uneven. They're slippery in some cases. It may not be safe for a lot of people that are at that retirement age that just think they're going to go lay on the beach all day long.
Yeah, I would say that was the one area we have traveled where it probably pretty much across the board lacked sidewalks. Like we would actually get to the point where we'd get to a new area and be like, or just even walking in a new part of the town that we were in, and we'll be like, oh, wow, look, there's actually sidewalks. Like it was something that we would notice that there was sidewalks in that area. So I think that you know, for people, we always would kind of joke, first off, it was not a good place to walk if you'd been drinking at night, because you might fall into a manhole that was not covered. Or it just was or you didn't walk and be on your cell phone, although we saw so many people do that, because you are going to fall over something.
Yeah, so that's just something to consider.
Right.
You know, are you going to be able to move around freely like maybe you are now? There are places in Europe, obviously, some of these old cities with the cobblestone. Sure, you're going to run into some of that as well, but I think there's a higher standard of what is expected in Western Europe or North America.
Now, one of the big cons that I would say for Southeast Asia, in that same section there of transportation, is that you can fly to Europe, you can find some bargain flights, there's some bargain airlines that will fly, like we've flown Norse Airlines for like $140 some dollars from JFK to London. You can find those deals. For Southeast Asia, you're not going to find those. You kind of general across the board, you're looking at $1,000, as an average. Of course, you're going to find some deals a little lower and then plenty higher. But that's a lot when you're looking at going back and forth. So if you have, say, your family is in the States, or even Europe, you're going the other direction, you're paying a lot to get back and forth. Where, if you want to hop to Europe and back to, say, the U.S. as an example, you're going to be able to do that for an affordable price.
Right, especially if you're on the East Coast of the United States. It's really easy. And that brings me to my next point, is the time difference.
Oh, yeah. That was a huge issue.
Thing for us, trying to communicate with friends and family back home. You're a day ahead of schedule, really.
Yeah.
Watching my sports was difficult. I was getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to watch some key games.
No. Because it was 14 hours for us, and we were Pacific Northwest, like we said, so most of our family is there. And so, that is a hard time difference to deal with. And I don't even remember, because we always figure out, okay, what time in the morning can I call my family, which is their nighttime? And I think morning just never worked for us. Like we would have to call afternoon or whatever. It was very limiting.
It was complicated, sure.
And if you're somebody who, say, isn't just necessarily retiring, but saying to be digital nomad and go to Southeast Asia, I think that would be a much more challenging area to be, especially if your time difference is, say, the United States that you're working from.
Well, we know Hannah and Trey probably lost. Some YouTubers that we got to be good friends with. She does work remotely. And the time difference really messed with her schedule.
I think she was saying she was getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to start work. So, you know, you have to, I know we can't do that.
No, I can't do that.
There's no way. No, yeah, we'll be done. We'll be done.
Yeah.
But I think that there's, I don't know, I mean, so many people paint such a glorious picture of Southeast Asia as a retirement location, but for us, we just felt there was not as many positives as there were some negatives. And not that Southeast Asia isn't a wonderful place to visit.
We can't wait to go back.
Right. But to visit, not see ourselves being as a final destination. Right. Now, another area that we were like, you can only take so much of it, was how dirty it was.
Yeah.
There were certain areas that weren't, because we don't want to paint all areas as being dirty, but kind of across the board, Vietnam was very dirty.
Yes. The back streets of Vietnam, a beach or two, the main touristy area was very clean, very on point. Area. The boardwalk area, beautiful, no doubt about it. You get kind of back out of the way a little bit, and you can kind of see the underbelly. Now, I know there's an underbelly to every city in the world, no matter where you go.
Right.
But there comes a point where we need to clean it up a little bit. That's when we decided to buy our water bottles, our Lark water bottles, make that purchase and start using these water bottles because we weren't going to contribute anymore to the pollution that we found. And it was. You see garbage no matter where you go, but this was over the top. It was over the top, and it just, I think the area that probably bothered us the most was Vietnam, and we absolutely love Vietnam, so in no way are we saying that this is just their culture, this is the way it is. And like Brian was saying, with the water bottles that we bought, they're so great because, we were watching. So that's the one other thing in Southeast Asia. If you're somebody who is a little concerned of the environment, it was very disturbing of how much plastic they use because everything is plastic. So they serve their hot stuff, which is so strange, in like a plastic bag. So you get it and then they tie the top of it and they hand it to you, but it's usually in that bag and then in another bag. And then they give you utensils even if you don't need them. And the amount of water bottles, because you have to buy your water. So we were going through the water and that, so for us to sit there and visually see everything that was being thrown away, because you do see it everywhere, the level of plastic because everybody eats out. Yeah, let's not just pick on Vietnam. It was all of Southeast Asia. It was all of Southeast Asia. And the one good example of that is not outside of Southeast or out of Vietnam is in Thailand. When you go to the 7-Eleven, we actually ate at the 7-Eleven, which sounds so funny to say because we did that in our teenage years. We would get like the barbecue sandwich and stuff, The nachos with the cheese sauce. They're really good cheese sauce. But, we were buying actually these curry dishes. You'd buy like a green curry or red curry, and then you'd buy your rice. And you would get up to the check stand and they would then toss in a plastic spoon for every yogurt you bought. They would toss in a plastic spoon, even if you didn't need it. They would, and everything is in plastic. We would ask for no utensils. And we would still order food and we'd still get it. Yeah, so, that's something we would recommend to people if you don't have a water bottle, because boy, we are tallying up how long it's going to take us to just have to pay for those water bottles in the time that we have gotten them, and we're coming close to where it's not going to be too long. Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. So bottom line is, if Southeast Asia sounds like a great retirement destination for you, it may very well be. But I would go and visit first. Yeah, and I would say don't just do
a vacation, right? Because we've all vacationed somewhere for, say, 2 weeks, and we come home and like, oh, that was the best place ever. Well, just from our experience, and everybody's different, but from our experience, when you travel someplace and you stay for a month at a time, or say a couple months in a country and move around, you've got Southeast Asia. I would suggest going, and if you can, spend 3 months, especially if you're considering retiring there, at least spend 3 months, travel around, go there during don't go just during the ideal time. Check out that humidity area, and see if you can handle it. Be there during the burning season and see if you can handle that as well. And what about the rainy season? So, I would test the waters a little before I commit to moving somewhere.
And the reason why Europe is more appealing to me than, say, Southeast Asia is simply because Europe is more what I am used to being an American. Not just culturally, but climate-wise. It's just more what appeals to me the most. When we go back to Southeast Asia, because we are going back to Southeast Asia, we're going to Cambodia, we're going to Laos, we're going to the Philippines, we're going to hit Vietnam again, we're going to go to Japan. And we can't
we're excited.
wait.
We're
going to do it all, and we're excited to do it. Could I live there? Could I take my pension or my Social Security, fly across the world, and live in Southeast Asia for the rest of my life? Personally, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. One area I do want to touch on before we close out, though, is healthcare, because people also wonder about healthcare, and obviously if you're looking to retire somebody, you're going to have questions on that. Healthcare we found actually was very good.
Yes, I'm surprised I forgot to bring this up.
Yeah, and so, yes, because you had such a wonderful experience. Memorable. But, one of the things that I would say is that our experience with the healthcare in Southeast Asia has been at private facilities. And our care there, we were highly impressed. The facilities are wonderful. They are top-notch. We have done YouTube videos on that where we go into a little bit more detail of it. But I would say, as far as needing healthcare, if you can do the private facilities yourself, which was totally affordable, then I would say it's a good, and dental as well, it's a good place to go. I would feel completely comfortable being there and needing to have any of that work done.
When we go back to Laos and Cambodia and this trip we're planning in the future, we would probably go back and get another checkup.
Yeah, we did our medical checkup.
We did our medical checkup. That was last year. We're going to go probably 2 years from now, maybe. Maybe next year. We'll see how it goes. But we'll probably do it again. Just get a physical.
Well, it's such a great way to just get a clean bill of health, or hopefully catch anything that's going on way early, which is just something we don't have the opportunity to do in the States. So, all right. Well, the other thing I would say is, if you do decide to look into Southeast Asia, one thing about every place that you're looking to retire to, every place is going to have its own restrictions and rules and hoops you have to go through, because every place has them. So that's obviously something to consider as well. Now, if you want to find us elsewhere, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube at Brian and Carrie. And then you can also find us on our website, which is briancarrietravels.com. So we really hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you next time. Cheers.